Sensei, how are you?
I'm good.
Are you
How
okay getting on the link?
are we?
I said okay with the link that I sent you. Obviously, you're on, so
Yeah,
any trouble.
yeah, everything's fine.
Awesome, awesome. So, hey, thanks for agreeing to do this. I want to go ahead and give two introductions. So the big question is, how are judo coaches, practitioners, and enthusiasts who love judo, who continue to spread the positive values of judo, how do we continue to grow the sport of judo, not only in the U.S., but around the world, the awesomeness of judo? So that's the question, and I hope that this podcast interviews can give us the answer. My name is Ramon Hernandez, and this is the Judo Waza podcast. Today I'm welcoming Jim Bregman, my first podcast interview, and I want to go ahead and introduce Jim Bregman, 1964 Olympic judo bronze medalist, 65 world judo bronze medalist, 65 Pan American judo gold medalist, and 65 Maccabiah Games gold medalist in the 80 kilogram division. He is three-time United States Judo Association president. He's also one of the founders of the United States Judo Association in 1968, promoted to 10th degree black belt by the USJA in 2018. And here I have Jim Bregman. Awesome that I could score this, very first podcast interview with you. It's for me, it's a killer. And just my personal experiences, I had Jim Bregman along with Jason Mars here in my dojo, two Olympians, but it was my first time being up close with Jim, and so I want to say it was an awesome experience. I want to say that I conned him into having breakfast with me that morning before the whole thing, and I got to meet his lovely wife, and for me, I just love the historical things that I can learn about judo, and Sensei, thank you for agreeing to that breakfast and coming to the dojo and agreeing to this podcast. So welcome. Anything you want to start with?
No, I want to thank you for inviting me to the podcast, and thank you very much for having me at your dojo to do that clinic. I want you to know that the breakfast was delicious.
It was good. I took Sensei.
My regards to the owner.
What's that?
Please give my regards to the owner.
Oh, you know what? I took Jim and his wife to an awesome spot here in Pompton Lakes. The what do we call it? The Cardinal Cafe. It's where everybody goes, and I know the owner was charged to have you there, so she was really excited. She talked to me about it afterwards. Before I get started with my questions, anything you want to share with us?
Well, not really. I think judo in America needs to grow, and we need to do a lot more at the grassroots level. I think, sadly, it's on the decline membership-wise since this COVID-19 disaster has hit the United States. A lot of our clubs are unable to function properly. So I would encourage dojo leaders to do anything they can on Zoom and keep social distancing, wear masks, clean up the dojo, but I'm not sure having in-dojo practices is wise at this time. So I would advise keeping in touch with your judoka via Zoom and doing online activities, exercises, drills. Perhaps some of the students would have partners or parents that would work with them. And I just want you to know we'll all get through this, and we will rebuild our judo clubs, and we will rebuild our associations.
That's an excellent way to start this out, and I want to say that you're displaying excellent leadership right now. Thank you for that. So I have a list of questions that I wanted to ask you, and my first question, to the best of my knowledge, so correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to the '64 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, you were living in Japan, attending college and practicing judo. Was all with the intent of making the U.S. team in '64 for the first judo appearance in the Olympics?
Well, actually, the Olympics was not on our minds in 1960 when I got there as an 18-year-old. There were two things on my mind and on Don Dreger, my instructor. And I was always taught by Sensei Ishikawa to practice judo to become a technician, to learn all of the drills and techniques to the best of my ability, and that winning or losing wasn't necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing was becoming a technician. In Japanese, being a technician is called a wazashi. And to become a wazashi, you need to practice every day and train every day. And ultimately, if you put in the work, whether you win medals or don't win medals, you will take a lot of joy out of being able to execute judo techniques and enjoy the sport as a lifetime activity. It wasn't until roughly 1963-ish that the reality of going to the Olympics started sinking in. And as we practiced and trained, the closer the date came to the Olympics, the more focused we got on Olympic competition, and the training accelerated to the point where we were all prepared to come back to our various countries and participate in whatever we had to do to make the Olympic team. Clearly, this was the first time judo was introduced into the Olympics, and we had a number of people from other European countries, particularly Britain. I trained with a British gentleman named Sid Hoare, who was a very close friend of mine. We trained every day with a group of people, John Blooming from Holland, and various other folks, Doug Rogers from Canada. So we had a very international training group of elite athletes that worked very hard, and fortunately, many of them went back to their countries and made their Olympic teams. Sid was on the British Olympic team. Doug Rogers made the Canadian team. Ben Campbell and I, Paul Mariyama, and George Harris made the US team. So as the Olympics approached, it became more of a focus. But again, throughout that time in Japan, most of us thought of judo activity as becoming technically proficient.
What was the criteria back then for the very first Olympics to make the team for the U.S. and, if you know of, for other countries like, let's say, Great Britain, Canada? Yeah, I don't know if you.
Well, at the time they had an Olympic trials. The Olympic trials was held in New York at the World's Fairgrounds, and as far as I know, the other countries just had one competition called the Olympic Trials. And if you won the Olympic Trials, you and your alternate were considered part of a training cadre. And the ultimate winner had the first spot to represent the country in the Olympics. Of course, prior to that, there was a national championship. And back in that day, our national championship, for unknown reasons to me, allowed members from other countries to participate. So during that competition, it was actually an international competition. And I fought a gentleman from Brazil in my weight class and ultimately prevailed in that weight class and won the national championship. I placed second in the grand championship, losing a close decision to Waymura of Japan. So it was kind of an odd circumstance for us who had trained in Japan to come back to our national championships and find it was actually an international event.
Wow.
That was the rule of the day. Now, I don't know why they did that, but
Yeah.
that was the game.
Interesting.
So a couple of months after that, they had the Olympic trials, and that was at the World's Fair also.
Okay.
But that was limited to American citizens.
Okay. Okay. And then after that, obviously, you guys had a training camp. Correct me if I'm wrong. Training camp, was that prior to the Olympics in New Jersey?
No.
Oh, okay.
That training camp was going to be held at Moffett Air Force Base in California.
Okay.
And when we got to the Air Force Base, nobody knew about it. I had flown out earlier and trained at Ben Campbell's dojo with Ben and his students in preparation of the Olympics. And if memory serves me right, we drove down to Moffett, and Moffett didn't know anything about it. So then we called the coach, Yoshida, and he made arrangements for us to train at San Jose State University,
Okay.
where he had a very prominent dojo and has served the judo community for over, I can't even count the years. The gentleman is in over 100 years old now. And he was the coach of the 1964 Olympic team. So ultimately, the team consisted of Paul Maruyama, myself, George Harris, and Ben Campbell.
Okay. In today's day, kids like my son have very few college aspirations that include judo. Okay. You've got obviously Texas A&M has a judo program. San Jose State still does. Those are really you have got a decent program at West Point if you can get in there, which is super difficult, you know. But those are really the only, I think, three colleges. Correct me if I'm wrong. Three colleges that have a judo program, and for West Point, they really stay very local nationally. They don't travel outside of the United States. That's my
right
thought. Now, talk to me about your college experience in Japan, along with training in judo in Japan.
Sure. I attended Sophia University's international section. And Sophia University is a Jesuit university affiliated with Loyola, Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And we went to night school, basically. The official language of all the professors was some level of English. Most of them were from all over the world, and they spoke English with their country's accents, of course. And the students were from all over the world also. So it was literally an international school. Mm-hmm. Many college-age students of diplomats, many college-age students of business persons attended the university. So it was quite an international environment, and judo also was quite an international environment. So you got to meet people literally from almost every country. And the academics were very rigorous. You did not float on a football scholarship to get a degree. You had to pass the test. You had to do the homework. And that was the primary object. My parents made it a precondition of my going to Japan that I succeed and come back with a college education, and that's exactly what I did. Getting a degree from Sophia University was my first objective, my primary objective. My second objective was to become a technician in the sport of judo. And I guess my third objective ultimately was to make the U.S. Olympic team.
Okay. Awesome. Interesting. After winning the bronze medal in 65 and the bronze medal at the World Championship in 64, excuse me. And then in 65, you went to obviously the World Championship and the Maccabiah Games and Pan American. Did you have any ambitions of qualifying for another Olympics?
Well, I hadn't thought about that. What I really wanted to do was, after the Olympics, I wanted to focus on the World Championships. And prior to going to the World Championships, I made a big mistake. I was doing randori with a white belt, and the white belt was much heavier than I, and I don't exactly remember what happened, but I destroyed my right knee.
Oh.
So because I had won a bronze medal at the Olympics, I couldn't, with that knee, I couldn't compete in a trials for the World Championships. I explained to them that the knee was getting much, much better, and that I could compete in the World Championships. So they made a decision that I could represent the United States in the World Championships without going to the trials, based on prior performance. I didn't tell many people the extent of that injury, but it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So at the World Championships, I wrapped that knee, the right knee, in a inner tube. In Japan, we didn't have first aid bandages or ACE bandages like you have now or had been in the United States. We would cut a strip of inner tube and use that as an ACE bandage, a bicycle inner tube. And actually, if you stretch that out and wrapped it properly around the injury, it made the knee quite stable.
Wow. Yeah.
So at the World Championships, I changed my stance to a left stance with the feet and a right grip, which was very confusing to the opponents because they'd never seen me do that before. And what nobody knew was I was protecting that right knee.
Wow. Wow. You really screwed up their scouting report that day.
I'm sorry?
I said you really screwed up the scouting report on Jim Bregman that day.
Yeah.
Why is he standing like that?
So that was actually a very great competition for me because I was very focused and I was very on, and I threw for full points 3 of the best judoka in Europe, which was rather amazing performance considering the knee. Ray Ross of England, Schneiders of Holland, and I threw Groussin of France with an Uchimata for a full point, who had not been thrown by Okano at the World Championships.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okano had a pin in.
Yeah. Awesome. So regardless,
Groussin amazing. Groussin and those other 2 gentlemen were extremely skilled people.
Yeah. But after that, any thought about staying as an athlete in the sport, or? did you already kind of think you'd done what you were going to, you'd reached what your goals and you decided to move on? What was your thought process back then?
It was pretty simple. When I came back, I went to see an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And he explained that I had severely damaged my knee, and that if I continued to train at the level necessary for international competition, the next time I saw him, he would have to put a rod in my knee. Remember now, this is in 65-ish,
Yeah.
Close to 66. The medical technology was not nearly as advanced and sophisticated as it is today. Medicine improves exponentially over years. So he said that if he had to insert this metal rod to keep my knee stable, I would not be able to bend the knee, and I would walk for the rest of my life with a handicap, basically. So I decided walking normally was more important than continuing my competitive career. So that was the end of my competitive career.
Wow. Now, after that, throughout the years, have you revisited with orthopedics to find out, like, you know, obviously in 65, orthopedics was what it was. Now, obviously, you know, throughout the years, has it gotten any, you know, like, you know, did you talk to any doctors that could drastically improve that, or just, you just kind of like, just hung it up after that? Yeah, you didn't revisit it.
No, I hung up the competition. I didn't want to take any chances at all of having that kind of movement for my body, because I did want to teach judo and pass my knowledge on to youngsters. But I've had 2 full knee replacements.
Oh, okay.
So the first one, they replaced the knee that was severely damaged due to that severe injury. And the second one, I think it was just a worn out knee from all the training. So
Yeah.
about 6 years after the first surgery, I had a second implant.
Okay.
The knees worked just fine.
Yeah. I tell you, the
not for international competition.
yeah, but the body's beautiful when it's working. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Shortly after you and some others formed the United States Judo Association, right back in 1968, who was involved at the time in getting that all together, and why?
Okay, this I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
These are the articles of incorporation of the. Could you see that right?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
It's the articles of incorporation of the United States Judo Association, which were filed on August 27th, 1975.
Okay.
The board of directors were as follows: a gentleman named George Bass, who was the president, James Stephen Bregman, Carl Geis, George Harris, a gentleman named Bill Horty, a young lady named Joan Millay, James Nichols, Dale Samuelson, and Hal Sharp.
Okay.
So those were the founding directors of the United States Judo Association.
Okay.
And the United States Judo Association was a successor organization to the Armed Forces Judo Federation. The Armed Forces Judo Federation, AFJ, or Judo Association, AFJA, was a member Yudanchikai of the JBBF Judo Black Belt Federation, which became the US Judo Federation.
Okay.
So at the time, the Armed Forces Judo Association was literally the biggest Yudanchikai of the United States because so many military personnel from the United States trained in Japan and spread the sport literally worldwide through U.S. military installations throughout the world. They had dojos and they practiced judo. And here in the United States, many of them, even after leaving the services, created dojos and taught judo. And they were all highly qualified, having trained in Japan and other countries. The Strategic Air Command under General LeMay created for the Air Force a training program for the martial arts where Air Force personnel, I don't know exactly when it started, could have started in the mid or late 50s, continued throughout maybe the 60s, sent Air Force teams to Tokyo to train for 6 to 10 weeks in various martial arts. And gentlemen like George Harris, Tosh Sano, and many other Air Force personnel were basically deployed to the Kodokan, other karate organization, dojos, Jitsu, which is stick fighting. They learned hand-to-hand combat, and they went back to their bases and taught Air Force personnel all of these combative skills. And ultimately, the Air Force judo team, the Marine judo team, Army judo team had very, very strong players. And 3 members of the 1964 team ultimately were Air Force personnel. George Harris had served, Ben Campbell had served in the Air Force, and after Paul Maruyama left after the Olympics and the World Championships, Paul became an Air Force member and ultimately taught Japanese at the Air Force Academy for many years.
Oh, well.
He's also written a very interesting book on the life of his father, who participated in repatriating many Japanese citizens from Manchuria after the Second World War.
Okay.
It's a very, very good book. You can probably Google it, and I don't quite remember the name of it right now, but so anyway, the story is that the Armed Forces Judo Association had a very large membership, and the reason they basically seceded, there were many, many reasons. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, okay. But it was a very big Yudanshikai under the USJA. That's
right.
Okay, wow, awesome.
It grew over time to a membership of about 22 to 25,000 people nationwide.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And I'm sure a lot of that had to do with the U.S. Air Force, meaning all the people that had followed it through the U.S. Air Force stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, okay. How soon after that the USJA was formed in '68, how soon after did you become president?
Well, it kind of all blurs together,
Okay.
Ray. I don't really have any specific date in mind for my 3 terms. I'm sure I could I could probably Google it and find out.
Yeah.
But I don't even remember who I succeeded, actually.
Okay.
But we were very progressive, very optimistic. We took international teams to Europe on training missions. We sent a team during apartheid, an interracial team, with Alan Coage as its um, captain.
Hmm.
Alan was a black gentleman who won a bronze medal at the 76 Olympics in Montreal. And Alan was the captain of our team to South Africa.
Hmm.
It was a goodwill mission. Technically, we didn't represent the United States as an official team because the United States and other countries in a attempt to pressure South Africa into better equal treatment and equal rights for all their citizens, they boycotted South Africa. Athletic boycotts don't work, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
What works is to take an American team consisting of all races, religions, and national historic origins across the world and show what the American democracy has achieved. And by that example, you make a better impression than simply boycotting.
Hmm.
And that's why when there was an attempt by Congress to boycott the games in China, in Beijing, I and a number of other younger Olympians who were not in judo participated with senators and congressmen in a news conference on Capitol Hill that was aimed at explaining to senators and congressmen that creating politics, international politics in athletics is more detrimental than helpful. And ultimately, that piece of legislation never passed the Congress to boycott. And we learned a lesson, I guess, from the 1980 Olympics, where the United States mistakenly boycotted the Russian Games, and our team did not participate.
Okay.
And that hurt not only international competition, but the members of all those Olympic teams lost, many of them, their opportunity to participate in an Olympic event.
Yeah.
It would have been more appropriate as an Olympic activity for us to have participated.
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, in must have been 84-ish, the next Olympics, I think the Russians boycotted our Olympics in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So keeping international politics out of athletics was a smart thing to do for the Chinese Olympics in Beijing.
2008.
And yeah, and the origins of the Olympics in Greece were to put down your swords and weapons, stop fighting, and have a Olympic competition. So maybe it's a good thing we went back to the roots and stopped fighting politically and literally, and have an athletic competition where all states can participate and all people, regardless of race, religion, national origin, or sexual preference, can participate on an equal basis.
Yeah. Nowadays, when you look at judo on the, globally, you've got a lot of countries that have a centralized judo program, like France, Sweden are two. comparing that to like the United States, which, you know, unfortunately right now we're underperforming, you know, in judo. How do you, you know, do you like the centralized system? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, that's a lecture of about 24 hours.
The small answer.
Yeah, yeah, that's American judo suffers from basically a lack of grassroots participation.
Okay.
Over the year, and this is all my personal opinion, various people have various opinions, and everyone's entitled to whatever they think. But my thought is that until we build a nationwide grassroots judo program at the dojo level,
Mm-hmm.
we will not regain international prominence or capability for a long time, because out of massive numbers, as these youngsters participate in judo, hopefully starting at 12 years old or so, and really enjoy the sport, have a good time, have fun in the dojo, have a family around the dojo, develop skills, not be criticized for losing a match, but be encouraged to learn from having lost a match, creating a positive attitude, teaching perseverance and patience and punctuality. These things on a very broad base will create a small subset of individuals who are dedicated enough to training and who are motivated enough to become technicians, wazashi, and ultimately make US teams, Olympic teams, and international teams. So the pyramid needs to be built from the bottom up.
Okay.
France has over 650,000 registered judoka.
Yeah.
France does have an advantage in that for a long time they were getting financial subsidies.
Uh-huh.
Now, under Rocher's leadership, they are creating methods of more or less self-financing. The headquarters of the French Judo Association on, I believe it's the Champs-Élysées, looks like an IBM headquarters.
Okay.
Quite literally. And they have professional teachers who are taught how to teach. It's in the school system, which is a key element which we lack. You mentioned 2 or 3 college programs. How many elementary school, middle school, high school programs are there in the United States at volume? It's not there.
Probably counted on 2 hands.
Right. So, you know, I'm sure that over time we will have Olympic athletes and world level athletes that will be very successful on their own. Their club and their coaches and their parents will finance them mostly, and they will become successful. Over the years since the '64 Olympics, many things have changed. One thing that hasn't changed, I think, that hasn't changed enough is basically self-financing for international competition. Most of these young men and women have to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, and I don't know the details, but at some point, Judo Incorporated does something for them, but it's only a small fraction of the expense incurred in trying to become a world or Olympic athlete. One thing our aspirational top athletes probably should do more of is train abroad.
Okay.
But I'm not really up to speed on what's happening currently on the international level with our athletes, but I do know that many of them struggle. They create GoFundMe pages. They work part-time. They do what they can. Their families support them 100%, but we just don't have enough elite athletes. I don't like that term. We don't have enough high-performing athletes concentrated in large dojos with 200 or 300 black belts on the mat where they can compete in randori sessions to hone their skills and become more proficient in what they're doing. Many of our, if you will, large-scale training dojos have at most 10, 20 athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it's not 200 or 300.
No, definitely.
If you go to Meiji University, Nihon University, you go to the Budokai, you go to large dojos like the, I can't think of the name right now, but the ones in France, you literally have 100, 150, 200 athletes on the mat training hard in judo.
Mm-hmm.
Black belts, very skilled, hard randori. They also do a lot of other exercises, weightlifting, running, jogging, whatever it takes. But without a large number of practice partners who are at your level or higher than your skill level, I think it's going to be very difficult to compete internationally. And again, these are just my personal opinions.
Got it. Basically, right now in the USJA, in the United States, we have, three, main organizations, and you got, a couple that are just starting out. Obviously, the big three is the USJA, the USJF. Both the USJA and JF formed the USJA back in the day, which turned out to be USA Judo. During your time at the USJA, were you involved in that in forming USJA? I mean the USJA and the USA Judo.
Yeah, again, memory doesn't serve me well with all of that activity that was going on, but I believe at some point there was participation, and the Stevens Sports Act, I think, prompted a reorganization. So yeah, the USJA, the USJF were involved. I don't know to what extent they're involved now. I think sadly they rotate one board member between the two organizations.
Uh-huh.
So they only have one board member on the JI committee. The reality is that if you look at the numbers, if you look at the statistics over a 2 or 3 year period, the numbers of participants in the JI, the JA, and the JF is diminishing. And this was even before this pandemic hit. So I think that judo leaders need to figure out how to recruit, retain members. And again, this is just me. And what we lost, that jiu-jitsu clubs, karate clubs, taekwondo clubs, aikido clubs gained, was an understanding that in the United States, there's a thing called marketing
Yeah.
and promotion
Yeah.
that has to take place.
Yeah.
And historically, there was an aversion to commercialism
Okay.
and having senseis receive money for teaching judo
Okay.
because it started as a communal activity in community centers.
Hmm.
And the idea of the AAU was that you had to be an amateur athlete, um, which had its own problems because being an amateur athlete meant you had to do, your family had to do, your coach had to do, your dojo had to do everything to finance you. Because if you taught your skill and got $5 for it,
Hmm.
and somebody reported you, you were ostracized from the sport.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were a professional.
You're a professional. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know,
Luckily, I think
not, I'm sorry.
I said, I think luckily the thinking has changed. I mean, my
Right.
opinion is I don't think we have, you know, I would like to see more business type thinking in the sport of judo. That's my opinion.
Great.
Yeah.
So there are 3 or 4 things I think that the American judo community writ large could do. Number one, get it into the school system somehow. And we have a scholastic committee run by Ray Conti, who is actively engaged in working with schools, private schools, public schools, to get some level of judo participation in schools. The more we can penetrate elementary, middle school, and high schools, and ultimately maybe create high schools that have teams like they do wrestling teams,
Yeah.
that would help a great deal.
Yeah.
And also on the college level, trying to get more judo programs into the colleges. At one time, we had a relatively robust college program.
Mm-hmm. They still have the collegiate
I think it's
judo
T2.
nationals, so I mean they have a platform to compete.
Yeah, right, but how many colleges compete?
No, you're right. It's more individuals that are in college that still practicing their judo, you know, compete. Obviously, this year the collegiate nationals was canceled due to the pandemic, but
Right.
people were in March. At the end of March, I think it was, they were getting ready to you know, participate in that. And I think your main 3 teams are West Point, San Jose, Texas A&M, but then all the rest of the individuals that are going, they're obviously representing their college, but they're going individually. So,
As an individual, absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So maybe we should try and get team competition going. This is not an original idea, but you know, if you have 5 to 10 persons on a team, like a wrestling match, a high school college wrestling match, and they got together and had team competitions, that might help. But anyway, getting it into the school systems, I think, and the rec systems, I think, would be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think putting together a group of managers and successful club owners and developing a syllabus of best practices that other club leaders could emulate, and using those best practices in a commercial setting to regain membership and to have some greater extent of full-time judo instructors that are able to make a very good living doing the sport that they love and helping a large population of judoka. And out of that setting, on a nationwide basis, you will get world and Olympic participation.
Okay.
So if you go back, and the dates aren't exactly right, but let's say the 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, judo was a dominant martial art in this country.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent insight.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm going to do some hypotheticals.
Okay.
So at its apex, the USJA had about 25,000 members.
Okay.
The USJF probably had neighborhood 25, 30,000 members. So let's say in round numbers, we had 100,000 members.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. We have 360 some odd million people in this country.
We're a big country.
Right.
We're big. France is that big, and it's got 600,000 people doing judo. So, I just got that from you. So, that's
right. So the question I have is, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
What can we observe of our behavior that could be improved by looking at a successful BJJ club, Taekwondo dojo, yoga studio, gym? What are these places doing that American judo is not doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why is American judo still dependent on itself?
Mm-hmm.
By itself, I mean each individual family that has a young person that loves the sport pays the freight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that's still pretty much true.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we could develop, if you will, a syllabus of best practices, how do you do these things? How do you recruit and retain and basically create an environment where men, women, children of all ages can participate and get the benefits of judo practice and enjoy the sport and continue to be members of our clubs and all of our associations? Then we could grow the sport. But there's not in my opinion, there's not a major effort on a coordinated basis or even a disjointed basis to grow the sport nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I haven't been in touch for 10 years with what's going on, but I do occasionally look at the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers aren't good.
Yeah, yeah.
There were times where we had 700 to 1,000 participants in national championships.
Yeah.
700, did I? Yeah, so 700 to 1,000.
Yeah.
Or even 500. I mean, these championships were huge.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm exaggerating. We only had 400 people.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it was an exaggeration.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing
Yep.
that I think we need to do is at some level, we need to create something like a kohaku shiai,
Mm-hmm.
where a kohaku shiai is where you line up people according to their skill and physical size in two lines down the dojo, and they compete against each other, and they stay up as long as they win. If they lose or draw, both sides goes down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quick and easy way to do a competition without the pairing and the entire tournament environment. So I would encourage areas to hold monthly Kohaku Shiais where people show up at a venue. It's not a medal-driven thing. It's a sport development, skill development thing where people try and take the line as far as they can go.
Yeah.
And when they lose, their coach explains what they could do better.
Yeah.
When they win, he explains what they could do better.
Yeah.
And it takes a little pressure off of this idea that I've got to get a trophy or I got to get a medal.
Yeah.
So this is personal opinion. If you concentrate on skill development,
Yeah.
you create a well-rounded judoka. And if that well-rounded judoka matures and wants to become an international level competitor, they will, because of their determination, find a way to do that.
I'm assuming that that particular format that you're talking about is kind of promotional style, right? Winner stays up, next person comes up, winner stays up, next person comes up. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah.
And the timer can just be a parent with a stopwatch.
Yeah.
And referees could be just one sensei out on the mat calling the scores.
Yeah.
So it's much less complicated than trying to create these big tournaments.
Yeah.
And just everybody shows up at a relatively large dojo, and they get in two lines and they do it. And then you can mix the lines up and do it again.
Yeah.
And use it as a learning experience. At the Kodokan, every month we had Kohaku Shiais.
Cool.
Every month you learned from that experience what you needed to work on for a month.
Wow.
And for example, if you kept getting thrown with a particular throw during your randori sessions, you try and figure out, why am I getting thrown with this thing all the time?
Yeah.
What am I not doing right?
Yeah. I think, you know what, we have that kind of same idea, but we call them camps. That's it. Get together for judo camps. You do a gazillion randoris and you figure it out. And so but I like the way you explain the format. I think it makes a lot of sense. Back in March, before this whole pandemic hit, again, I said in the beginning of the podcast, I had the opportunity, the honor of hosting you along with Jason here. I think I always have Jason a lot. I like his style of teaching, his style of play. I especially enjoyed watching you interact with all the people that attended the clinic. People were very, very engaged to what you were talking about, to what you were showing. And I know that recently you just did a Zoom that was broadcasted, on the USJA social media, outlets. How would you like to participate in future for judo, whether it be virtually by Zoom or do you want to get back out to the dojos to meet again and inspire the youth? I'm talking kids as young as 4, juniors as young as the cadet level, the IGF junior level. How would you like to participate, Sensei?
Well, over the years, I have participated in numerous camps and done numerous seminars and clinics throughout the country, and I will continue to do that.
Awesome.
That Zoom session can be found if you Google Jim Bregman on YouTube. You can see the Waza Zoom session. And what Rob Riley and I are trying to do is create more of these Zoom sessions.
Mhm.
So we will have, we've already had a lecture by Bill Stevens on Zoom concerning the legal aspects of running a dojo and being a sensei.
Mhm.
In the future, we will have uh, Zoom lectures on international refereeing by Bobby Donaldson. We will have a Zoom session on local refereeing and how to come up the referees ladder to national level and international level, taught by Rick Salato, who is an expert referee.
Mhm.
We intend to have judo techniques of coaching taught by Steve Cohen. These things are in the mill. We have asked other judo leaders to participate in these Zoom sessions. We will record them like you're doing now, and we will post them to YouTube so that they can be seen and watched and hopefully engage students and teachers of all levels throughout the country to continue to participate in judo through this difficult time. So that's what Rob Riley and I are engaged in. Also, Mr. Ray Conti will present a lecture on scholastic judo and the work of his scholastic judo committee in trying to get judo into the school systems. There was also an exquisite lecture done by Mr. Brian Money on teaching children and adults who are physically or mentally challenged how to get them engaged in judo.
Okay.
And what we have found, in addition to Brian's activity, a gentleman named Max has also been very heavily involved in assisting veterans with physical handicaps and PTSD
Mhm.
through the sport of judo. Many of these gentlemen have had concussion injuries. The ladies who served in various combat situations have various physical injuries and mental injuries. And through judo and with his techniques, he has made amazing progress with these military personnel. So there are a lot of things going on, and we will try and get Meyer Max. You can Google him, and we did a clinic at a dojo in Maryland concentrating on military personnel and their challenges. So judo has many non-medal related activities that are very good for the community. And the idea that kind of benefit didn't just extend to winning medals and international competition. It was more an educational activity. And I think if we got back to that a little bit, you'd get more participation, you get more recreational activity, and out of that broader base and healing the communities, you will pop up the 5 to 6 to 10 international players that you can look up to and aspire to. But the emphasis has to be recalibrated, in my opinion.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday. During this pandemic, that's all I'm doing is listening to podcasts and getting other people's point of view. I'm walking my dog and I'm listening to a podcast. I was going to West Point yesterday. I listened to a 2-hour podcast. But the one thing that was discussed in this podcast was obviously, you know, you talk about the benefits of judo and being a part of the Olympic movement, but also as a martial art and as self-defense. Like those are other two avenues or messaging that you can add to it to encapsulate judo, for a broader audience, you know. And so you just, by what you just said, you totally hit it on the head. So Dr. Riley's awesome. He helped us out with our clinic with you and Jason, and I see him as a central key to getting the message out, and a lot of good information, especially during these times. Sensei, thank you for the time today. I think this is awesome. I didn't do much of the work. You did all the talking. I appreciate it. I'm going to publish this, and I'm going to share it with my members here. I'm going to share it with the judo community, and I hit it out of the park on at least nabbing one awesome subject, which was you. And thank you very much. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much.
Thank you to your wife, and I hope that once this is all over, we can have you back again for another clinic and keep sharing the message.
You know, you certainly know how to entice me with that breakfast. So Terry and I will be back.
It's a deal. Another breakfast, same location. They do the eggs awesome there.
They do. Have a good day, Rick.
You too. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to add one more thing if I can. Before I let everybody go, the USJA has made the decision. They're going to allow us to host the 2021 Summer Nationals. I know this is serious times. You know, people are really not thinking about competition. They're thinking about, you know, surviving. But we've done a lot of work so far to establish, to win the bid, to secure a location, a big arena in New Jersey, and also a tournament hotel. So we've done a lot of the work, and we're going to continue to pound away at that until, you know, we can have the tournament, until, you know, things get better. I'm hoping that Jerry Navarro can have his U.S. Open in October, and I think if he has it then, we're on our way back to recovery. You know, let's see. We have to leave it to the scientists first, but I wanted to at least get that out there. If people are listening to this podcast, they're going to know that we're going to be hosting the 2021 U.S. Judo Summer Nationals in New Jersey on behalf of the USJA and USJF. So I wanted.
Let me ask you a question, Ray. What month are you targeting?
Thank you for asking.
2021.
Thank you for asking, Sensei. We're going to target registration to happen on July 1, the tournament to happen on July 2 and 3, and then after that, give everybody that attends options on what they can do for vacation opportunities, you know, whether it be in New York, the New Jersey Shore, the Pocono area, all sorts of, you know, fun kid and family, fun activity, you know. So
Okay.
we're going to build a portal on that, and so you'll see that, you know, as the months continue. So we're going to be inviting a lot of people, obviously.
I hope that I can make it.
Oh, it'll be great. It'll be great to have you. Really, you'll be our VIP guest.
All right. Well, we would enjoy that very much.
You'll have to
take your wife out to dinner.
There you go. You'll have your VIP pass for you and your wife at will call.
Okay. Thank you very much. Looking forward to it very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sensei. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Be well.
Be well.